Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back to Warframe. Now, unfortunately, my third part, which had the very last section of the Sacrificed quest, the recording broke. There's no two ways around that, unfortunately, and as at the time of recording, the quest isn't replayable. I've not been able to go and kind of capture that last part. However, though, I as a result, I kind of want to just go over kind of what I thought of the quest and just kind of what we learned from it. And at some point in the future, I'll record that last part. But I imagine that either if you're watching these videos, you're somewhat interested in it in Warframe anyway. You've probably played it yourself, and so on and so forth. But if you are avoiding it, if you've not got there yet and you're concerned about it, then there will be spoilers in this anyway. But then again, if you were concerned about those, I don't know why you would have been watching me play through it and my thoughts on it as I went in the first place. But anyway, before I get into the lore and what we learned, the first thing I want to do is just touch on kind of what I thought of the quest. And there was let's do this kind of in a constructive way. So first off, I thought the quest was very cool. It was a lot of information that we kind of knew but needed kind of some solidarity given to, and we got that. There was some nice, cool, like interesting new sections, like the memories from Umbra and stuff like that, which I found very interesting. It was very nice to see things from a different perspective, but at the same time, it's like that. I felt like maybe there were a few things that could have been additionally cleared up with we're giving some kind of tangibility to some of the things that we've kind of hinted at for a long time. You know, like we got told a lot about the Warframes, but then we didn't necessarily get given. We got given the interesting information about one particular Warframe, which was the Excalibur Umbra. It would have maybe been nice to see some hints around kind of how the other Warframes were also developed, also built out. But then moving on to some of the things that I was less on board with, I felt like there were a lot of missed opportunities in the quest, both in terms of some of the storytelling stuff. As said, it would have been nice to maybe see some more of those other elements of information, even if it was just hints at them more so than like proper solid pieces of information, because obviously the quest was very focused around Umbra, so introducing more information about other Warframes might have been more difficult. But it seemed like there were just again some missed opportunities in regards to the gameplay for the quest. After the first little while, I started finding the sentients just tedious, and in my view, the sentients are a tedious enemy. They're like with a lot of the others, especially the Corpus and the Grineer that have probably been most worked on, with kind of units that are somewhat differentiated, especially with the Corpus. You've got enemies that aren't necessarily a bullet spongy until you get to particularly high levels where everything becomes bullet spongy. But they are things that you have to kind of consider when approaching. Nullifiers get an awful lot of hate for that because of the random popping up of their shield after you've already taken it down, that kills your powers and all that kind of thing. But, you know, as a result, yeah, the mimics, okay, so now we've got the foot soldier type of sentient, but they were still just a hassle to churn through. And you know, I've been playing the game for a while. I've got a decent number of mods. I've got a decent number of weapons some of which that I just leave set up with the variety of damage types on them to take on things like sentience. And yeah, it was just a bit of a churn through, and it's like you know, by the end of it, I just wanted more than just kind of 3 unit types that took forever to die. And then also another missed opportunity I felt was when they first started talking about Umbral Warframes, this new type of Warframe that come from a different place and all the rest of it. They started talking about how they had lots of ideas for Warframes, and you know, this was on a dev stream ages ago, but they kept saying they had a lot of ideas for Warframes, and the Umbral Warframes would be a way for them to go back into those ideas, draw out new ideas and so on, and apply them to those Warframes as well, so that you've got something new that also still follows with the old concepts and could be brought in as a way to tackle sentience and deal with other things. And the only difference that we really have is the difference between Radial Blind and the Radial Howl, or the Blinding Howl, whatever it's called. And I just didn't feel like that was... Like, fine, yeah, okay, it's a difference, but it wasn't really a difference to either the way that the power worked or kind of anything else. So again, I felt that there were missed opportunities there. And I wonder if, like, some of this comes down to whatever they're going to be showing off at TennoCon, whatever kind of next big thing there is. Like, we know that Venus is coming, we know that there are some other things coming, but you know, if it's something particularly substantial, if the next open world has a very large and much more involved kind of metagame to it, I suppose, then fine, maybe that would explain why, even though they've talked a lot about the sacrifice to one extent or another, it's then fallen short because they've actually been working on something else. You know, it just didn't seem to have as much to it, and as many of those opportunities that they had talked about in the past on dev streams and things like that being taken full advantage of. And my last criticism, well, other than the fact that I just hate the operator, the fact that the operator talks, the fact that the operator's personality doesn't really match up with everything that's happened to them, and they are still mostly just a whiny team. Like that I just, you know, I turned my operator off for a reason, and the fact that they pop back up in quests and things to have a chat when I don't want to hear their voice. I don't want to hear their perspectives, because their perspectives are frustrating, because there's this weird disconnect between what I've been doing in the game and how immersed I am in that, and then the attitudes that this random child is bringing to me. You know, I'm not a big fan of that anyway. But then also, Ballas's shift from some of the things that we've looked at in regards to the stuff that he's said in the Prime trailers, the stuff that he's done in the past that we see in various kind of lore entries from Samaris and from elsewhere. He's all of a sudden become this soppy romantic, when previously we've seen him condemning his emotions for entrapping himself, for losing power to it, for not being able to focus on what was necessary, for losing sight of things. And this is something that he also kind of chastises and condemns the rest of the Orokin for losing sight of these things. And yet then he just turns up and he's like, oh, well, I've had heartache for a millennia or two, and it's made me sad. And so as a result, I was not only a traitor, but I'm going to continue to act out. It's like, no, I'm not buying that. I feel like there has to be a connecting element between his very pragmatic, manipulative, controlling, and arguably quite objective elements of his personality that we see in his other recordings and things, and then where he is here, where he's stupid enough, even though he's managed to be this mastermind for the longest time, he's stupid enough to stand within blade's length of an enemy that's returned for seemingly no reason. You know, it's he seems to have gone from being pragmatic, rational, sensible, to then being irrational, emotional, very kind of short-sighted, when he's apparently been playing the long game for a while. And there's, again, just this disconnect between what we can observe in areas of the lore and then what we can observe from this. And I wonder if maybe this is one of the reasons why we've not seen the Prime trailers for, what was it, Hydroid and Zephyr, just because maybe the stuff that Ballas would have said in those. I mean, there's been comment from dev streams and things that Steve Sinclair hasn't necessarily completely finished writing out and fleshing out all the things for Ballas to say in those trailers. But could that very possibly be because now there's this gaping hole and it's hard to sum up where and what Ballas would say next, considering his character has gone from being manipulative and rational and objective and focused on the weaknesses of the Oracle and how he and others need to try and rise above it and excel and control. You know, like he's one of his main complaints and main worries about the Warframes and so on is the lack of control. So, you know, and how he feels that they will destroy them all, which they do seemingly with his permission. But then, you know, he then, as much as he's aware of how dangerous they are, he takes a step back from that perspective just to be whiny and lovesick. And it's like, even in the memories that we see him, he's being vindictive and manipulative, and he's planned everything out for how Umbra's going to kill their own kid. And yet then, you know, the end of the quest, we see him feeling all high and mighty, and, you know, it doesn't make much sense. And it's like he's feared the devil children that are the Tenno, and he knows the full capacity of the Warframe, and he has seen both of them working in unison to cause untold damage and win the war against the sentients, both in terms of possibly being allowed to by Hunhao and just genuinely just wrecking house of their own accord. And yet, to quote Ballas, he questions whether or not the has the wolf become a dog? Is this Umbra or some Tenno? And then the operator says both, and then he doesn't go, okay, fair enough, I might be in a little bit of trouble here. I should probably make my escape whilst my sentients come and attack you. It's, oh, well, then you're both going to burn, and then he hangs around, you know, and then we stab him. And in my case, I told him that it was inevitable, and he says, yes, she has foreseen it. So there are a couple of things, though, then that line in particular could mean. And this thing, because in every one of his lines, according to the transcript on the wiki, he mentions that she is something to him. So he in the first one, he says, or in the negative one, he says that, you know, I am just the stone and she is the hand. And so does that mean that Lotus has basically been his handler as well through his dealings with Hunhao? And that's why she looks like Margulis, because it's a means of controlling Ballas. When it said, oh, this was inevitable, he says, yes, she has foreseen it. So does that mean that this was just something that Lotus said that she expected all along? Although I want to kind of come back to the she at some point in that particular one, because there's something else that kind of sprung out to me in this bit. But then the last one, the more positive kind of light side point, the operator says the cycle is broken, and Ballas goes, now I know what she sees in you. Then Lotus turns up, and her comments are interesting, and I can't help but feel that this is as a result of her being reconnected with Hun Hao since Ballast turned up and took her away. And I feel like possibly Lotus's own plan has backfired, because her taking off her helmet, leaving it there for us, her connecting to us when Ballast comes and finds her in her sanctum, where seemingly she's been in the void, in the moon, for the longest time, even though she was a sentient. So taking human form seems to have disconnected her from her sentient parts and allowed her to operate without further damage from the void. But then, where you're asking where she is, she says, "I'm here, Tenno," and then, you know, we ask what's happened to her, because obviously she looks very different to one extent or another. And she says, "Nothing." This pauses, and then she says, "Is what I am," which to me suggests maybe there's a little bit of dissonance still in there, you know, that pause. But at the same time, if she's been reconnected with Hun Hao, this is probably what she was afraid of for the longest time, why she was so afraid of Hun Hao and kind of bottled herself up when we had to take him on. But then, you know, she says, "Drifting gaunt beyond the bleak star, mother, I am coming home." And so, considering that Tau is the new kind of damage type and everything that's connected with the Umbral Warframes and their weapons, I imagine that the bleak star is probably the Tau system. Out on kind of the vastness of the Orokin Empire outside the Origin system, or at least the potential thereof. And the thing that I find interesting is Hun Hao says that in his quests that Lotus, I think it's the Natar quest, that he specifically says that she was born from his womb. It's like, right, so who the hell is her mother? You know, it draws a different question, but also for her to go home in her current state, she can't travel through the void without harming herself more. And so the one place that we already know of that could prepare her for that journey would be the Unum and the tower. And so as a result, it's an interesting thing that then reconnects the Unum and what we've been talking about in regards to the Unum in previous lore videos back to what we've just seen in this quest. You know, it's and the Lotus knows about those the legends and the things that the Unum can do because we do. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next, how this brings us to Venus, considering that the Unum is on Earth. And, you know, it's going to be this long kind of cycle maybe of what happens next. Now, the one thing that stands out to me is where Ballast says, yes, she has foreseen it. I'm not going to suggest that he's talking about anyone other than Lotus, considering that the other two comments also seems to directly apply to Lotus. You know, whilst you could maybe argue that saying that the Unum is the one that sees something in us, and then having Ballast go, okay, now I know this is what she sees in you, and, you know, she has foreseen it. The Unum seems to be somewhat prophetic. You know, we can maybe attribute those two to different people, but when he says, I am just the stone, she is the hand, unless the Unum has literally put him on this path, because we have been told before that the Unum, a conversation with the Unum can change a person. Could the conversation with the Unum have pointed Ballast in this direction? Yes, but at the same time, who's he actually operating for? If she's the hand and he's just the stone being thrown, then who's the mind making the hand work? Well, if you know we look down the kind of trail there, it looks like Hun Hao was the leader of the sentients. Natar was his daughter, and then she was attached to Ballast as his handler and as his accomplice in getting the Warframes and the Tenno to do whatever they wanted them to. So, you know, it's an interesting set of things there, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops. I'm looking forward to TennoCon to see what they announce and what they tease there. But then there's one final part, and this is something that I didn't expect to bump into, but I bumped into the man in the wall on my ship after completing the quest. And he says, "Feel better, kiddo?" Or "Feeling better, kiddo?" And I went, okay, why is he asking that? And then the operator came out with, "I killed him, Isa." And it's like, wait, hold on. And then he's like, "Oh, did you now? Is that how you remember it?" And you just say yes, and he just goes, "Good." So the reason why we're able to take away the pain from the Warframes isn't just that we've been through so much, and so as a result their experiences pale in comparison. It's literally that we connect with them and steal their memories. We steal defining elements of who they were, who they are, and take them into ourselves as our recollections. And apparently that's good. And the man in the wall seems to be kind of very focused on himself. You know, "Remember, kiddo, you'd be nothing without me." And so as a result, does the man in the wall feed on pain? Because imagine, you know, the children were so innocent and so disconnected from the insanity that happened on the Zariman 10-0 when everybody, all the adults went nuts. But the adults were causing each other harm, they were causing everything, you know, they were doing as much damage as possible. But then the kids kind of became separated from that. Probably because they didn't have enough of a life experience to have suffered much in the way of hardship or much in the way of difficulties. And this was their first traumatic experience, but they were able to realise what was going on between one thing and another, and so they were able to distance themselves from it. But then if the man in the wall in some way feeds on these harsh memories, these harsh experiences, and we're its envoys in essence, then could it be that we are just its feelers out into the rest of the material world, the material universe, as opposed to the void, to allow it to feed more effectively? You know, there's a lot of interesting questions that come up around that. So overall, in terms of quests, I would say that this probably isn't by any means the best quest from the cinematic quest that we've got so far, or even from some of the other non-cinematic quests. I would say that actually it's probably one of the weaker ones in regards to gameplay and playing through it. But in regards to what it's presented us, you know, as much as I have my quibbles around the operator and around some of the things around Ballas's seeming shift in perspective, it opens up more for ideas of kind of where we're going next in regards to potentially outside of the Origin system, whether or not we're looking at a Ballas that's been changed by a conversation with the Unum, or whether or not he's just such a weak man at his core that's just the connection with something that could be Margulis again for him has broken him and caused him to kind of twitch more towards insanity and like his irrational emotional state, rather than his seemingly more usual pragmatic and kind of distanced manipulative perspective. And then also the stuff in regards to the man in the wall, if he's happy for us removing memories and taking them on as our own, is that literally what drives him, what feeds him, or something like that? Because again, if there's one person who would have a lot of suffering, a lot of confusion, that would potentially be able to feed and hold back the man in the wall by himself, it would have probably been Rel. And he was the one seemingly holding the man in the wall at bay for the longest time. And it was only after we started to remember that the man in the wall reconnected with us at the end of the War Within. So there definitely seems to be an essence or an element of memory and suffering that connects us to the man in the wall. But how deep that goes and how important that connection is going to be something that remains to be seen. Anyway, guys, otherwise, I'm sorry that, again, I couldn't get the last part of the quest in, because, you know, it was just, I finished it and I jumped out to OBS, and that last section had just not recorded properly. The sound and some of the visuals had all gone skew-if. I don't know exactly why, but as said, at this particular moment, the quest isn't replayable, so I haven't been able to go back in and deal with it. And I'm not saying that by the time you're watching this it isn't, I'm saying that at the time I'm recording it isn't. But otherwise, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. You know, there was a lot of information that was made much more concrete, a lot of information that was made very much more vague, and some new information that was kind of provided to us, again, also in a very vague way, as per lots of stuff in Warframe. So I'd be interested to kind of see and hear what your thoughts are in regards to kind of where we're going and what we learned. But anyway, guys, otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the video tomorrow. Yeah, take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.